Well, when I was a kid, my dad encouraged me to be a doctor. And when I got to college, I was going to be a doctor. And then my senior year in college, I started doing a research project with one of the professors there, and I loved it. And I was like, why am I thinking about being a doctor? This is so much more fun. And it's something that I had a long discussion with my dad about after that. And I told him I was not going to go to med school, and he was like, what do you mean you're not going to go to med school? So so it was really the ability to do a research project in the lab of one of the people that I was working with. And it was really independent. He gave me a lot of independence. So I could set up the experiments. We discussed how it was going to happen, and then I just went and did it. And it was just so much fun, and I really, the whole of my career, it's been the same way. I really relished the sense of being a Magellan, being at the leading edge of what's known and trying to find something new, and wherever it takes you, So that's what encouraged me to be a scientist, and I've never looked back. I've never regretted it. I think the hardest parts are certainly writing the grants and trying to get money and trying to maintain your funding in an atmosphere of really low acceptance rates at the NIH. So in my career, I've had several times where I was out of funding, and then everything comes to a halt, and then you have to try again to get the funding and then start up again. And for me, it's partly because the system that I work in, using mouse embryos in the mouse system, it's really difficult to publish a lot really quickly, and so and the experiments take a long time. So and I know that's been that for some of my students, that was really hard to deal with, that they had comrades who were getting 5 and 6 papers out a year, and they were getting 1 every 2 years. And so the system is hard, and then trying to keep the funding for it is really hard. I think that's the very hardest part, because the funnest part is certainly doing the experiments, and then getting the results and seeing the results that your students bring in. That's the funnest part. But trying to maintain the money to keep that going is the hard part. And then also finding students who are interested and excited about what you're doing, because it's one little thing in the vast sea of scientific research that's going on. So that's a hard part too, but I think the funding is the really hardest part. And one of my first students, we were actually doing pretty well. We got a paper published after 3 years of, from when he started in the lab, and it was using mouse blastocyst. But he had a friend in one of the pharmacology labs who was, doing experiments with cells, and it's so much easier to get the experiments done. You can do so many more experiments per week, and we were really limited, especially with mouse blastocyst. You're limited by the number that you can get, and so even, flushing out embryos from 40 mice per week, we were only able to get maybe 800 or 1,000 embryos. Mm-hmm. And that's not very much protein. So that was I was really thinking about that, because, it's the funniest is, I don't know about funny, but, I guess some of the funnest or most exciting times were early on in one of my projects, we're looking at trophoblast. We discovered that mTOR is the molecule that's regulating the onset of the differentiation process into a motile trophoblast. And that was so totally unexpected. But the data just fell out as we actually got advice from a colleague in pharmacology, and did the experiments according to his gold standard. Here are the gold standard experiments. We did those. Data came out so beautifully, and I think that having a hypothesis that you make, and then finding data that really support it, it's just so exciting. And I think that's the that one was probably one of the most exciting. And then when we were able to document through live imaging cells rearranging in the neural tube, that was really exciting too. But the even better part of that was going to a meeting and having somebody that was speaking right ahead of me say, well, we just can't do this live imaging. And then I got up and said, well, we did this live imaging. So that was also really exciting to, really be able to say that we had accomplished something. Yeah. So I think that is the most exciting part. And like I said, the funnest part of this whole business is doing the experiments and getting the results. So I thought a lot about this too. And one thing that I think was important for me, or worked out well for me, I didn't really realize it at the time, and that's why I think I would give that advice to a younger female scientist, is don't delay having a family. If you want a family, then don't delay, because having a child when you're a postdoc or a graduate student is so much easier than trying to have it when you're starting a job. And so I had my first child when I was a graduate student, finishing my last year in grad school, and then my second one when I was a postdoc. And by the time I got my position, they were 8 years old and 2 years old. So at that point, they were so able to take care of themselves, and I wasn't, constantly worried about baby stuff. And I think that made starting my position so much easier. It's not as much of a conflict between home life and lab life, because you've already sort of established your routine at home in a much more relaxed way when you're a postdoc or a grad student. So that's one thing. The other thing is, it's really important to have buy-in from your partner when you have kids, that you can have the time, so they understand that you have to have the time to go into the lab, to do the experiments. And that was something that was definitely really valuable to me. I had a husband who really knew what was going on, was so willing to take care of kids and to pick up the pieces when, that was needed. So that's and then, just related to your job, just, go for it and go for things that you're really interested in. Follow your heart and follow your interests. And I think then you'll actually never work a day if you do that. Yeah, so that's, I think that's a really hard thing. Well, one thing is to try and get more. So when I was a grad student, there weren't that many female grad students, and there were hardly any female professors. So when I was a grad student, I was at UC San Francisco, and really it was a handful of women that were full professors for sure, but even just professors in the department. So now it's better, but I think just getting more women into the pipeline will make things improve. I've noticed in the last 3 or 4 years that a lot of the applicants are female. And one year, I think we made offers and got acceptances from only women, which was a shock, like, how did that happen? But I think getting more women into the pipeline is going to ensure that more women are present at all levels. And then, mentoring them in grad school and especially as postdocs, mentorship, I think, is really the key thing. Having a good mentor that can really promote you and is willing to go to bat for you and promote you as much as their male students for positions, for grants, for, I know writing letters for my students has been, a full-time job. You have to write a lot of letters if you want to get them you want to get them supported for both positions and for applications for money. So mentorship, I think, is really a key thing. And I mean, I guess I would advise you guys, since you're at the very start of this whole business, look for good mentorship. I mean, I think I've always told grad students that they should pick projects that are close to their heart, and especially in grad school, work on something that you just absolutely love. But it's so much easier and so much better if you have a great mentor also. So looking for great mentorship, I think, is an important thing. And you can look for that not just in the person that you're working for, but also in your committee. One of the people that I saw make just enormous use of their committee was one of my former students, Mana Parast. And she had a committee. She went and talked to each member of her committee weekly and kind of caught them up on where she was, asked them questions about their advice to her. So she got advice from a lot of different viewpoints, and she also had mentorship from all of the people on her committee while she was trying to finish her project. And I just thought that was so wonderful because it helped her out a lot. So you can find mentorship in people on your committee, people that you can talk to in your department, or that you've met through taking classes with them. And